This is Barrett with Kinaye Motorsports, and I'm showing off my Sondors Ebike with our custom 3000 watt MXUS rear hub motor kit. The rear motor is laced into our standard rim there. You'll notice it does not match the Sondors rim. We're actually haven't found the source for the Sondors type rims yet, so unfortunately we can't match, but we can build you a matching front rim that matches our rear. So if you do want matching rims, we can provide a full set. So just a little bit about what this conversion entailed. We have a laced rim motor combination. We swapped out the tire from the original bike, so the tube and the tire were off of the old motor. Here you can see the controller. We've actually mounted it on the down tube. There is not sufficient room in the triangle for our large 60 volt battery as well as the controller, so we opted to put it on the down tube there. Depending on the type of or the size of tire that you have, you may be able to mount the controller on the seat tube back here. But in this case, the spacing wasn't quite big enough when we used the stock tire. If you're using a shorter tire, that may be a feasible location for the controller. So there's our display. You can see right now we are right around 62.2 volts with our battery. Our 60 volt battery option, I'll show you the battery here. So here is our 60 volt triangle battery. We're actually working on a collaboration with Unicycle on this particular battery. 60 volts, which is 16 cells in series, and then the capacity will depend on the type of cells that Eric ends up using. Last I talked to him, he was looking at the Panasonic PF cells, which have good discharge rating and should be able to keep up with this controller. The controller, a little bit more about the controller, is made by the same manufacturer as the stock bike. It's a KT controller. This one happens to be a 60 amp sine wave controller. So the benefits of sine wave is that the motor runs more smoothly and much quieter than a kind of a standard controller. So with that 60 amp controller and a 60 volt battery, our total potential wattage for this system is 3,600 watts, which is pretty remarkable for this particular bike. Typically for the Sondors bike, the stock motor is rated at 350 watts, and with 15 amps of controller and roughly 42 volts, 36 to 42 volts depending on your state of charge of your stock battery, you could be looking at anywhere from 500 to 600 watts. So this particular system is about 6 times as powerful as the stock bike. The other unique feature about this particular setup is the fact that it can do regenerative braking. And just to discuss a little bit about what regenerative braking is. On the stock bike, we have a geared hub motor. And a geared motor essentially multiplies the potential torque of a given motor design. On a direct drive hub motor, there are no gears. So in addition to having less parts to wear out, the gearing in the motor itself, you also have the ability to use the motor to essentially create a reverse current that not only stops the bike or helps to stop the bike, but it also recharges the battery to some extent. Much better stopping force, especially when you're going down a long, steep hill. I just personally find a lot more comfort in having that motor do the braking for the most part, as opposed to relying on the disc brakes that are included with the bike. The disc brakes still are functional. In fact, the motor kit does have that mount for the rear disc brake, and it still works. But it's actually set up so that when you first grab the brake levers on the bike, the motor does most of the work before you even engage the pads on your mechanical rotors. The other thing to note about this particular setup is you'll notice the throttle control is a little bit different. So instead of the thumb throttle, this kit actually comes with a half twist throttle. There's a fixed portion of the grip on the right here, and then a kind of a half twist where you can grab with kind of 2 fingers. I like the half twist versus a full twist, which takes up the whole handle grip. Mainly because when you're not riding your bike and you're just moving it around, you can actually grab onto that fixed portion of the grip, and it doesn't have a tendency to kind of take off on itself. With a half twist, you really have a good stability when you're moving the bike around when you're not riding it. So in my opinion, the half twist is a safer type of throttle control versus a full twist. The power on button here just controls the power. So if I press the power button, power goes off. It's very similar to the power button on the stock throttle. So again, push the button in to turn the power on, and then you'll have to press the middle button on the PAS switch. PAS works the same as the stock bike. In fact, this is because the controller is made by the same manufacturer. It uses the same KT LCD3 display. There are some different programming setups that would need to be done between the stock motor and this particular motor, just because of the different motor designs. But other than that, the display and the functionality of the controller and the display is very much similar to the stock bike. In addition to the power on switch on the throttle, there's a 3-step switch here on the throttle. And what this is 3 distinct power levels for the motor. So for instance, if you want to go on a long ride and you don't want to use a lot of power, a lot of torque, you can set it to the low setting, which limits the controller to about 20 amps of power. The low setting is all the way over to the right. So if you want to extend your ride, you want to have the most range, I would recommend using the low power mode all the way to the right, which will limit your acceleration and your starting torque to a 20 amp setting, which is very similar to the Wendy controller's 20 amp controller. It'll give you a similar power rating, although with a higher voltage battery you'll still get a little bit more power. So even on the low setting, this is a little bit more powerful than a 20 amp Wendy controller and a 48 volt battery option, which I know a lot of you guys have upgraded to already. So that's the low setting. The medium setting is all the way to the left, and that power is about 40 amps of power, so that's about double the power that the Wendy controller and a 48 volt battery would give you. And then if you really want to have some fun, the middle setting here, that's your full speed setting for this controller. That will make the controller pump out about 60 amps of battery current to that motor. On a fully charged battery, that'll get you close to about 35 miles per hour top speed with the 5-turn winding. This is a 5-turn winding on the bike. We also have a 6-turn winding, which has more torque per amp, but lower top speed. One thing of note, you'll notice I don't have torque arms on this particular setup. I'm actually testing the strength of the stock bike's dropouts, and so far they seem adequate. You know, I've ridden it fairly hard, and it hasn't deformed the rear dropouts at all from the tremendous increase in force on the axle that this upgraded motor is providing. So far I've been pretty impressed with the build quality of the frame. It seems to be adequate for at least the 5-turn motor. I'm going to continue testing it with the 5-turn, and obviously if I have any issues, we can develop some custom torque arms for that to beef it up. But for now it looks like it's a pretty basic straight swap out for this particular setup. And I'll show you some video coming up here with myself and Tom Danner, who was gracious enough to let us race him on his stock blue Sondors, and the results are pretty impressive as far as what this setup can do.